Hello, everyone. Let's get started. This is the June edition of Customer Console Call. Last week, I sent you what will be presented today. It's what's in what state, which is coming up for the release. As you know, we did the May release, and some of you have the release for testing in the environment to eventually to push it into the production. But this is a second release as per schedule. And Mike and Greg would be taking you further into what is coming up and answering your questions. It's going to be interactive session, so as usual, you can raise the questions as we go through. Mike, you want to take it over?
Yeah. So what's in what state? I personally believe that this is perhaps one of the most significant additions and features that we've added to Nerve Center. And I'm going to walk through what it is. I'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about some use cases. And what I'd like after that is maybe to get some feedback as far as what your thoughts are. If this, you see the value in it, is there something more about it that we need to do, or I want to make sure everyone really understands what it is and what the value is. So to start with, what's in what state? I mean, if you take a look at our nav tree, right, in the client, the aggregate alarm summary or the alarm summary, when we're there and you see the various severities, you can click on the whole severity list, or you can click on individual branches in the tree, individual severities, right? This today is the only place visually you can see what's in what state. However, there is no access to that information from within Nerve Center. So if I wanted to know, how many interfaces do I have with a high usage, or how many high temp alarms are there in data center X, I can't do that. I can't get that information. I can see it here in the aggregate alarm summary, but I don't have the ability to query that information. And that would be something pretty useful. What if I want to look at an overall percentage of things that are in a given state? Now, I don't know if everybody customizes their severity list, but in any case, you certainly do customize and give your states within an alarm diagram different names that have meaning to what that state is all about. So being able to do a query, electronically, essentially through a Perl interface, at least to start with, and ultimately through a RESTful interface, we feel is of huge value. And, for a couple of reasons. Number one, within Nerve Center, sort of like I mentioned, if I'm managing like multiple data centers and I want to see if I have some number of devices in a high temp state, and I want to correlate, that to maybe, other aspects, maybe the actual data center location, maybe the zone that the data center is in, or the cabinet that the devices are in, by leveraging the ability to count and see how many things are in a state, and then also look at the attributes of a node, like we talked about a few weeks ago. I could see, are these 3 nodes all in the same, cabinet, let's say, or the same data center, something of that nature. So being able to query that for the purpose of using that information in an alarm, I think there are limitless possibilities there. To me, the most significant piece, however, is being able to display state externally to drive dashboards, or even better, an actual event viewer. Essentially, the biggest differentiator, that we see in Nerve Center is the fact that we are state-based. And those of you who use things like Netcool or other maybe homegrown event browsers know that in almost pretty much all cases, the event browser is based on writing something probably to a database and then relying on the query or perhaps some rules to do things like deduplication, and using a concept of a set and a clear if you want to make sure that the most current value of a given alert is on the screen. That can get out of sync very easily, especially if Nerve Center or an alarm or something gets reset. Immediately, that whole set clear concept is gone. So driving an event browser based on true state is, to me, the most significant potential use case for what's in what state. Now, when I was using Nerve Center in the real world, so to speak, when I was working for other companies like Sprint and some others, the current view of the aggregate alarm summary is not something we would just give to users, but there were certain people who wanted to see that because it did give you a real-time view of the status of various aspects of the network. And I recall one particular use case where we had a problem where essentially a firewall kind of ran out of connections, and it basically caused what appeared to be a massive outage. We suddenly lost management connectivity to a bunch of nodes, and when the problem finally gets resolved, going to the aggregate alarm summary and actually watching the number of node down counts drop, you right away know, yes, we are coming back to life. Things are happening. So in a catastrophic situation, being able to look at the real-time status based on state of where things are, I personally think that there's some pretty decent value to that, especially driving it as an event browser. I mean, if you take this view right here and simply make the columns at the top of the event browser or the alarm summary something that an operator would care about. Obviously, the timestamp, the node, a sub-object, maybe a little, the state name is good, and maybe a little human-readable description that you would add through an add bar line. Wow, you've got a pretty decent event browser right there, and it's based on real time. It's not set clear. So that's the whole concept of what's in what state. So if we go back to the slides and take a quick look at the first slide, it's kind of going to reinforce this. But it's basically today, the first step is a Perl API that lets you make queries. Essentially, you're going to be able to do a query, and this may be what's on the next slide, but do a query based on severity and drill into states or instances within severities. You're going to be able to do a query on alarm and view what's in what state based on a given alarm in actual states, and then based on a node. Take a node and see, well, what states are a node in, much like you can do from the alarm tab on a node in the node dialog anyway. But being able to programmatically query this information and be able to use it and leverage it. Again, if I'm driving an external dashboard and let's say I want to use a map and I want to roll up a status of a node, I can look for all the alarms associated with a node and use that to propagate a color change, let's say. So in this case, we see, all alarm instances. That's exactly the kind of thing that you're going to be able to query programmatically using what's in what state. The first iteration is Perl based, and if we take a look at an example of that. Essentially, it's very much a similar format that we've seen in the current Perl API, where you can query configuration parameters about a given node. In this case, you'll be able to query actual state-based information. As we see there, it's alarm instance, by node, essentially. So that's what the functions are going to kind of look like. I mean, that's what we're talking about. That is what's in what state is. Any questions? Any feedback on that? Did I explain it enough? I hope everyone understands that the significance of state-based versus set clear, I think, is going to accentuate that differentiator that Nerve Center has. That is the whole state-based concept. So I'll, open it up. Any feedback? Any comments at all? Did you see the value? Did I explain it well enough? Nothing? No comments?
Greg? Quick question for you.
Sure.
Basically, if I were to do this programmatically, and I understand the risks, so is there protection built in so that I don't basically shoot myself in the foot? For example, let's say I'm doing a query every minute to see what's in what state, and my query takes a little bit longer than anticipated, and it runs over, for example. Is there protection built in so that a stale query will not impact Nerve Center server?
So you're concerned about the the overhead, I guess, is what you're saying.
Basically,
yeah. Yeah, Greg, I guess, would have to answer that one.
That is something we can look at as we get up to demo at the, for the, as we start to release this, we can look at to see where that might come in. However, because all of this is, running, you're dealing with a live system just as the client does. So when you're drilling in from either the aspect of, starting from severities, programmatically you're approaching this from the same way that the client shows it to you. So you're starting either from a node, and you're coming in to look at what alarm instances they are, and then jumping in to see where they're at, and optionally, setting them to a different state or resetting them to ground. Here, all these controls that have only been visual up until now become programmatically possible, where you can send something to a different state. Or the alternative is that you're coming in from the alarm severity level, and you click on, or, programmatically, in a sense, you select ones that are, take your severity. Again, you see the instances, and you can see the data at that point. What you're looking at is the live data. So there is the potential that while you're looking at the data, things move. And in Nerve Center, things can move very quickly. So there is a chance that you could say push something from one state to another, but just in the moment that it took for you to your application to decide to make that step, it may have moved on its own to that state. So we may introduce a safeguard here, for instance, where on this display, where let's say here we observe that an alarm instance, if on this fourth from last line here, where the alarm instance, we pull it out, we can see what state it's in. This is logic that's not on this diagram, but down here where it says my alarm instance equals the new alarm instance. So we pull in the alarm instance at that point. You could see, you can do a get of the current state and see what it is in. The logic that's displayed on the screen here is simply forcing everything back to ground regardless of where it is. But we could add an extra parameter to the set, for instance, saying if, we're going to set the state, if you're still at state, once busy, twice busy was what was in this example here. So if you're still in busy twice, then go back to ground. And that would allow for a little bit of a control here. So if between where it says state, comma, ground, we could say state, transfer it if you're, from busy twice back to ground. And then once you press save, or the program then goes on to do the save operation, if things have moved, then it could then it could give you some feedback instead of actually having done it, so that you would know that you're not quite in sync with where things are with Nerve Center. So that kind of a safeguard could be done. The other thing that could happen is that by the time you pull over an alarm instance and do anything with it, it could have gone back to ground on its own and disappeared. So there's another option where perhaps we can, there would again be a piece of feedback that would be useful to know that something has moved. We could even have this capture the idea that something has moved. You could pull up an alarm instance here where it has my alarm instance, and then maybe we can set a way so that as events happen to that alarm instance, you get notified. So as it changes state, it comes right back to how the client currently works. As things change state inside the server, it updates the client, and this display changes through runtime. Everything is very static here because I've intentionally set up this way this morning just to have it stand still while we're talking. But on our live systems, as we know, instances can come and go well within the course of just a couple of seconds, or they transition very quickly. So that live notification may be useful. So back here at our API level, maybe we set up a way that you can receive notifications of changes so that you can be tracing or tracking in real time what is happening with an alarm instance that is of value.
Actually, I would keep it even simpler. I just thought about it while you were talking. I didn't even think about this condition. So each one of them, this new alarm instance for each alarm instance, where you're getting the alarm instance, you're setting it, and then you're saving it. So basically what you're saying is from the time the new alarm instance is instantiated to the time that it's saved, the state may change.
Sure, yes.
So the save is truly the atomic instruction. Everything else can happen whenever. So if the save returns a -1, hey, I was unsuccessful in changing, or -2, hey, the alarm no longer is valid,
Exactly.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yes, something like that could be done.
Okay. All right, that's enough protection. Basically, what I'm concerned about is, I've seen it where devices go in and out of alarm very rapidly. We have that right now, and I'm sure everybody who's running live has seen it. It's just, I love it basically, and the protection. Basically, I was trying to get to protect myself. That's all. That's where I was going with this.
Mm-hmm. And that's an important thing to think about, because we are dealing with live data, and so it can be changing out from underneath our scripts at any time. It will be, it's just the nature of how Nerve Center works. As it updates the live model, will change things, right?
Yeah, I can code in, like, if alarm instance save, the return value is -1. Oh, nothing to do because the alarm no longer exists.
Yes.
So from a programmatic point of view, if the error conditions coming back are valid and they're explained, then I can write code around that.
Yeah.
That's what I care for.
Okay, good.
So, Manjul, what do you think about the state-based event browser concept? If that were something available with Nerve Center, do you think that would be useful or better than a set clear netcool
No,
type
I love
of...
it. No, I love it because I was talking to one of the guys I have the 8 in the lab, but I haven't finished deploying it because I'm in the midst of rolling out 7 in our production environment. What I wanted to do was have basically every morning I want to have which devices are currently suppressed because I have SNMP issues, ICMP issues, or whatever. Then I want to have a tally inventory of what was the last time I got a trap from a particular device? What was the last time I pulled a particular device? At any given point in time, I want to be able to say, oh, here's a device X. What state is it in? Same thing. Not just alarm state, but also what state of management is it in?
Right.
Because the device could be unmanaged for multifarious reasons. And if it is currently managed and it's not in any alarm state, what was the last time I talked to it successfully? Be it ICMP, be it via poll, be it via trap. When did I have any kind of interaction, active interaction with that device? So
Right.
those are the type of things that I was in the process of thinking about how to actually go about solving. That's the problem that I want to solve next. So it's, this gets me partially there.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, as you all know, we partner with, with Edge technologies as an option for a dashboard environment. And that is one of the things that we had talked to them about, is they would love to see a lot more like real-time kinds of updates in a dashboard. I mean, in almost all cases, what they're reading from is a database. So, you can set up poll intervals and things of that nature, but it's still not real time, especially when you're talking about things like maybe it's not useful, but it would look pretty cool if you had a gauge that actually could show you, in real time, how many devices are in a critical state, how many are in a, et cetera, or any dashboard parameter for that matter. So if we can drive a dashboard via an API, the Edge dashboard could query a RESTful, interface, an API interface, and get those updates as they happen, not a database query based on an interval looking for a set clear or what is the last entry that I got from a given device. This is true state. And they felt that, as do we, that really does expose sort of what is truly different about the way Nerve Center works.
There's another aspect that I would love to, I don't know whether you have it already added to this, but I would recommend. So like, for example, what you talked about, what's in what state, this is looking at it from a holistic overall perspective or a node perspective, where it's individual node ID. But if we have like all the, in version 7, you guys introduced the concept of attributes. And I'm using those attribute concept to, like, for example, our trading systems are one attribute. Our back office systems are another attribute. Even the networking gear, or like anything that is core, is one set of attributes within the node.
Right.
So basically, exactly. So you have sys description, sys object ID, vendor. So let's say vendor. You can have, and then model. So Cisco Nexus switches, Cisco iOS switches, Cisco Catalyst, whatever. So in your query where you're doing by a node, if you can add another, like for example, filter by attributes. So what state are all my Cisco devices in? What state are all my Cisco Nexus switches in? Basically, the query that you have in the back in the PowerPoint presentation has also access to these attribute fields within the, like for example, for each alarm instance, or you have this alarm instances, you're querying by ID equals node ID, where you have, instead of ID, you have attribute equals X and attribute 2 equals Y.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it is all one API interface, so, I guess Greg can speak to it. It sounds like it's probably doable.
Right. That should be doable. That there's a from the Perl interface at present, you can see those attributes that have been defined. So whether they've been defined, in the client interface manually by somebody, creating an attribute and saving it, or whether it's through the Perl API, it's the same data. It's the same. You're pulling it in different directions. That's all. So yes, we can devise then the ability to, at this point where this slide has it retrieving a node on that line where it says my node equals new nerve center node, that is basically you're retrieving from the server a node based upon a node name. We could provide a facility where you're retrieving based upon something more sophisticated than simply saying a node's name. You're asking for being able to devise a, you know, like a select in a way. You know, I want the node.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. You hit it right on the head. It's a select statement where I'm selecting based on multiple criteria, where over here it's a unique criteria where you're only specifying a node name. There is no and or logic in there. So if I have multiple, where all of these selects are based on a session and a name, or basically a server and a name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's basically a select statement. And then this way, if you have the edge, you have the query within the edge, you're pulling straight from the live system. And if you have a graph that shows, oh, this is the state of all my Ciscos, this is the state of all my trading systems, this is the state of all of my back office systems, where I use the attribute field within each node to segregate the systems into different logical containers.
Yeah, makes sense.
Version 2.0.
Here we go. Yes, no, this is all very valuable.
I'm muting myself. I'm going to mute myself now.
All right.
Very good.
Anybody else have any feedback or comments on any of this?
Hey, Mike, this is Sal here. My comment is similar to the select, where I was going to suggest perhaps allowing to query by group.
By property group? Yeah,
Yeah.
that too would make perfect sense as well. It's the same concept, just a different parameter.
Excellent. All right, we will consider this and find a way to provide a filtering for being able to pull node IDs based upon query, or providing the ability so this is not something we have to scan the entire node list to find the ones that you're looking for. I mean, we could implement if you're looking for property group X, the brute force way is to retrieve all the nodes and just be scanning for them one at a time, but that's a client-side pull, and it's a huge drag of data across the network for really for something that should be done on the server side. So yes, the selectability would be tremendous. This is good to learn.
So you're coding this as we're speaking, right?
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. Yeah.
We'll give you till like the end of the day to have that.
Oh, thanks. Very good. Tremendous.
Anybody else? I mean, if no one has any comments about this, does anyone have any comments about anything else? Any other topics or something you ran across, something you thought of, anything other than what's in what state is okay to bring up as well? Has anyone given any thought to, we talked a few weeks back about monitoring protocols and the connector effort that we have going on. Has anyone thought about any new protocols or new data types that might be of interest? Or we talked about, I believe we talked about the protocol buffers as one of the things we're working on. Has anyone had any discussions about potentially moving away from S&P at some point and looking at something other than protocol buffers, because we are definitely looking at, you know, what's next. We're hearing from people here and there about the desire to move away from S&P. Now, generally, when I query a person and say, really, why is that? What is, you know, is it not providing something for you? Is there a drawback? You know, I usually don't get an answer. It's just sort of this general, I don't know what it is, just for something new, I guess. I don't know. I know that there are some who believe that S&P creates a lot of overhead on their devices and or network, and I know that that is the case with some types of polling engines. I don't know, just a topic that came up this week in a discussion that we were talking to another customer, and they expressed the desire to get off of S&P, but they didn't really say what they wanted to go to, and they didn't really have a good answer as to why they wanted to move away from S&P. I don't know. I'm sure there are reasons. I just haven't heard anything real concrete yet. I know protocol buffers, it's a streaming, more of a streaming type of a protocol versus a poll. So if the complaint happens to be that polling with S&P puts too much traffic on my network, then I'd have to say, well, then how does streaming from every single device create less? It seems like that would be more, because now you're getting everything all the time, whether you want it or not. Of course, I don't really know enough about protocol buffers. Maybe it is something that you configure to stream only certain things per device over a certain interval. You know, I don't really know. We haven't found a device, at least at our disposal, easily that supports protocol buffers for us to really experiment with. But there are, you know, things that, you know, that you can get through Google and so forth that simulate. Anybody have any thoughts on that, on alternate protocols? Maybe WebM is another one. That whole route is certainly, you know, web-based protocols. I know there are other, like XML type protocols, maybe. Just wondering if anybody's had any thoughts or experience with any of these things. Okay.
We do. I'll tell you my experience. We use sniffers to capture data and analyze the data based on the protocols. Because in financial space, there are a lot of proprietary protocols. So we don't look at Nerve Center for processing protocols per se.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. What I'm talking about is something other than like being able to gather management data via something other than S&P is what we're being.
I stand corrected. Yeah, you're absolutely right. SMTP. So basically, a lot of how can I say this? UPS or some of these like generators. They have stuff built in where they will email an alert.
Yeah. Okay.
Where the message contains, the email message contains what was in alarm state. So basically, Nerve Center consuming that email message and then generating an alert based on that. There are a lot of devices like that that I deal with quite a bit that will generate email messages, but they don't have provisions for SNMP or even with SNMP, it's so antiquated, it's ridiculous.
Well, actually, that is one of the ones that we do have available now for testing. if you want to test that. We have one of the connectors that we have today is email. We have URL push is one, email is another, syslog is another, JSON is another, I don't even recall, protocol buffers is another. And essentially what it does is you receive it. It's an external process that essentially receives it, normalizes it into really what is a common data format, which is what Nerve Center uses. I mean, the data format of what is contained in a trigger is essentially a common data format that is used inside Nerve Center. So the external listener catches the email. You have the ability to customize, the receiver to pull out the pieces you want from that email, and then it gets used to essentially fire a trigger into Nerve Center that you can now do something with, create an alert or process it through more, states in an alarm, and then, do an alert or whatever you want to do after that. So we do, in fact, have it. It's something available for testing, and it's something that we had talked about a little while back. I don't know. You maybe weren't in that one council meeting. I don't recall, but essentially we're leveraging a utility called LogStash to do that sort of thing.
Okay.
So
I'll have to try it because I remember email was available only when Nerve Center was running on a Windows box, but not on a Unix box. This was a long time ago, and since then I stopped looking at it because I've been running it on a Unix platform ever since. So, but I will go back and look.
Yeah, if that's something you're interested in, shoot me an email or something. We can talk about it offline, and I can get you that stuff, because we are eager to kind of test it out in a real environment.
Right, and kind of similarly for the more recent versions of Nerve Center, we've rewritten that action on transitions so that you can send, if I pick one that's off here, that there you can add actions now, which is a revised SMTP ability. The older one, yes, only went out through when the product was running on Windows systems, and then it was a very simplified approach when it was running on, it used to be Solaris and HPUX, AIX, and so we've revised that now so that you can send a mail message out, and it will, it's a fairly efficient mechanism where it will, you have it configured with the administrator on how to attach to the SMTP service, and then at runtime you provide this template here where you can have it emit a message, and that can be done either as an SMTP, or if you have an SMS gateway through your service provider, then you can send SMS messages as well. It's a good way to get data out of Nerve Center. With the LogStash method that Mike was talking about, that's the way to receive inwards, and then processing SMTP-based notifications.
Yeah, it used to be you had to have send mail running on your Unix box, and now this mechanism actually essentially allows Nerve Center to be kind of like an email client, really. So you're just simply attaching to an email server that would be similar to connecting to a client, and you're just sending the email that way, or SMS message.
Right. So here in this configuration of this Nerve Center that I'm running on my local system, which is a CentOS 7, I have it set up here in the admin program to use this as the connection outbound to that Gmail account, and I name the account, the password here is given, and so this is once learned then at runtime as a send SMS or send SMTP is encountered, it uses that to log into this, to the server, emit the message, and logs back out again.
And as you can see, I think we are the only network management monitoring system that is able to do actual text paging through a modem. Now, talk about cutting edge. Talk about cutting edge.
Now, don't brag.
As you can see in the screen right back there.
You get that pager going. That's right.
Believe it or not, we actually, not too long ago, had a customer that was using that.
Okay.
Anybody else? I think that's essentially all we have. What's in what state was what we were intending to cover today.
I can talk about what's coming up with the web interface, for instance.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, all right. Let me delve into that for a second here. We have, with the web interface that's in place now, and if I can find that and bring that up, so this here is the same, I'm looking again at the same server, my same local nerve center server. This is with the new user interface. And this is something that we're going to continue to enhance over the months to come. You've been hearing us say this for a while. The help that comes with it is on board with the product, and if I click on the options here and allow that to come through, here we are. So I've got a modern help system attached right there with it, bundled with it on the server, and you can jump in and provide help with that. What we're going to provide next here is the ability to give you a view into the server's health. And this is going to expose data over the web interface that is something that you cannot get through either the admin or the client application. It's something that is available if you're directly logged into the Nerve Center host, that you can look at its various output files that it keeps running, but it has not been possible to see them with either the admin or the client. We get these questions from customers, and in effect they're directly saying, how do I know when my Nerve Center server is pushed to its capacity? One of them even expressed the statement as, how do I know when it's going to fall off a cliff? And so towards that, we want to provide a set of graphs as part of that interface. And so what's coming up then is a smaller piece, it will be eventually be just a piece of the overall user interface. But this is a set of graphs that we're going to be providing that will be live and updating through time as you leave them up. And they started with, simply enough, us discussing about how would we go about it. And we went from the basic drawing on paper and discussing back and forth about how to, how do we want to, provide views into the server's health. And from that, whoops, this one's sideways. We came up with a set of graphs that really get to the core of, how well is my server doing. And so from this dashboard, you have access to several different graphs. For instance, you can see what is the throughput of my server. How much am I polling? How much is completing? How much is still in flight at any particular moment? For those who are engaged in wanting to see their trap load, how much has been received? How much is processed? And how much is waiting for being processed? Because that pending total can be that telltale sign that the server's not keeping up, or just simply the fact that there's traps flowing through here may give you the sense that overall things are working well. So another piece that we're looking at is the trigger processing. A server that is active is generating a great number of triggers internally as Perl subroutines fire off triggers, or trap masks, pull routines, and there's both the creation of triggers internally and their processing. So another sign of its health is to look to see that this trigger action is working and is moving along. Another piece is, for instance, alarm instances. How many am I creating? How many are out of ground? How many are being resolved going back to ground? When we're diagnosing what's wrong with a customer situation, and that happens, there's a need to be able to look at some of these things, and often this has come to being able to pry into the background, go onto the server, look at these features. It's often given as spreadsheet files in the background, and here we're being able to provide that outwards. This particular view of the protocol level is really at that raw level of putting things onto the wire and getting things back off. So if you're running 1 polar or 15 polars out there, whatever it is, how many gets, how many get next, how many get bulks am I sending, how many responses am I getting back? Am I getting a large number of timeouts? I want to be able to see that level of activity going on. So again, if you leave this running, it'll show you the outstanding qualities of, that current status of what is happening live on my, polling activity. And for those who have dealt with issues with the server before where you're wondering if it's healthy or not in terms of is it managing its load, this manager view allows you to see where the data from what has been commonly called the trace queues output, so you can see the level of activity going on with each of the primary managers in the background. Are traps being processed fast enough? Is the alarm manager overwhelmed, or is it keeping up? And so this ability to see into the server is what we're targeting next. And what we want to get to is being able to show this up on this dashboard and then let you drill into that data if you see something that's concerning, or just let it run here. So that's one part that we're providing next, and that's our release 2 of the web interface. I also want to point out that we're working on the documentation. If I go back to the older versions of the client, if I can pull one up here, which version is this? Whoops. I want to go get the help screen up here. All right, this is a 6.2 system. We've been catching up our documentation because it has been the case that a lot of the documentation has fallen out of sync with what is shown on the screen. And so we've taken a good amount of time here and delved into it, and we have a whole new interface. This is actually live on our site at this point. So the 6.2 documentation, which was in the old style, has been replaced with this mechanism. And it's this, the applications that are already deployed for 6.2, and we'll make this so that it's the same for if you have a 6.1 or a 6.0 or a 5.1 nerve center installation. It will all flow through into this documentation, and we'll show the screens as they exist now with the correct steps on how to proceed. So this is a great piece of catch-up that we're doing, and for each of these jump points here, it brings us into the piece. Here's a piece I haven't hooked in yet. But as we go about this, I'm pulling in the correct documentation so that you can see, how to use the product and what are the steps that you can take from that point. So those are the 2 things we're working on right now. Farther up ahead, another piece we want to be able to pull in, it was just discussed this morning, was the ability to be able to do replays of trap traffic. There's already included in the Nerve Center 6 and beyond the ability to be able to record trap traffic, and is it pulled into this piece here, I wonder? Yes, there's an event recorder that you can get to. If you do an import and you browse into the Trap Center piece, there's an event recorder module that you can pull in. And once this is activated, it is a simple model that will record all the event notification arriving at your server into a spreadsheet. The next step then is to be able to play it back. And there we have an event player, which is a Perl script that uses the API you saw earlier to do processing of traps. And we'd like to make this more readily available through the user interface so that you can manipulate that spreadsheet and then indicate that you want to play back that spreadsheet, which is basically a recording of the trap traffic, and play it back through your trap masks. So that if you have, let's say, a set of trap masks that you are preparing for some disaster that you hope never happens, receiving events from your favorite devices saying whatever the trouble cause is, that you can be able to test that out ahead of time. You would, create a base spreadsheet, and then you could enter rows based upon how that trap should look at runtime, and then be able to play that forward into your system and see if the trap masks and the whole alarm sitting above that is working per how you expect that situation to play out in real time were it ever to happen. So that's a feature that we want to be able to provide coming up on the next release, like release 3 in the future. So that's the news from engineering on where we're at and where we're headed to. Any commentary or feedback is always welcome on these things.
Great. So any comments, feedback on what Greg said or Mike said? Covered quite a bit, what's in what state, the new documentation, 6.0 documentation, and the other information that's recorded on playback. Manjul, Dex, Sal. Mike and Greg, any other topic you guys want to cover?
I am good.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for now, but this has been a terrific hour. This has been a great experience with, back and forth on, I think we're getting a lot out of this in both directions, which is tremendous. That's what the point of this council is, to be able to share and move things forward in a productive way.
Okay, then as usual, I will post the recording on the net soon. Thanks everyone for your time to participate in this council and give feedback. Thank you.